Namaste. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Anam Cara Thursday night meditation program. And I'm Lawrence Edwards. I'm the founder and director of the Anam Cara Meditation Foundation. And so it's my privilege, my honor to be able to welcome you here to our program each Thursday night. And this evening, we're going to be doing some Q&A. Last week, I had asked some people, or asked everybody to send in some questions, and some people sent in some questions, so we'll take those up and have a little discussion on that. We're going to be beginning in a few moments with the opening mantras. And, the mantras are our way of both helping the mind ease and calm itself and separate out the all that's gone on in the day and even the days before, so that it can be fully present. So we can be fully present in this, what's known as a satsang. Satsang means keeping the company of the truth. What's the truth? The truth is who you are. The truth is your sublime and divine nature. So being able to come into that living presence, we want to get our attention away from all its habitual roots of running with the mind and thinking and feeling and reacting and all those things. And mantra is an extraordinary vehicle for being able to do that. And so we start with these opening mantras that invoke both the nature of the infinite, the nature of the highest, to remove obstacles, to clear our path, and to open doors for us, as well as invoking the aspect of the infinite that holds everything in its loving, knowing embrace. And that's what these opening mantras do. They're a way of invoking what our highest nature is, and always with the intent that by being infused with that through the practices, through our meditations, we can then walk that into the world and make a difference. So we'll start with the opening mantras. Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai Gajananam Bhuta Ganari Sevitam Kapita Jambu Palacharu Bhakshanam Umasutam Shokam Vinashakarakam Namami Vigneshwara Parapankajam Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti 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 Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai. So namaste. Welcome once again. So good to be with you, and thank you for bringing your loving presence to tonight's program, and that we can together, through the practices and through living presence, come together and be able to put out that kind of much higher and more loving, sublime message and vibration into the world at a time when it so desperately needs it. You know you're in Kali Yuga when people will risk their lives to go into a bar or a shopping mall, but not necessarily to chant the names of God. What to do? Well, tonight we're going to do some questions, and so some people have emailed me some questions, which was great to see. And a number of them have to do with mantra, which is, I love to talk about mantra. So it's a delight for me that people have that kind of interest, and we can take up some of the topics related to mantra. There are, and mantras raise a lot of questions for a lot of people, because there's a lot of things written about mantras. Various styles of yoga and meditation make use of different mantras. And so getting an understanding that is really important for being able to make full use of mantra. And certainly Muktananda Swami, who I studied with for years, and the Siddha lineage focuses on that, but many traditions do. So some of these questions come out of that. And this one individual, our friend who's down in Texas, writes, I've read in different yogic texts and teachings that once one receives or is initiated into a specific mantra, that students should stick to that, and only that mantra, in order to receive the full extent of its fruit. The same thing goes with sticking to worshipping a singular form or expression of the divine, for instance, Krishna, Durga, Ram, Christ, etc. While your approach, grounded in the mantra Om Namah Shivaya and in the divine form of Kali, also incorporates other mantras and other forms of the divine, particularly from yogic and Buddhist traditions. So a question is the use of multiple mantras and the worship of multiple faces of the divine counterproductive to the spiritual aspirant's journey towards liberation? It's a great question, because there are so many different ways that we use mantra. And so one way of understanding it is that, mantra, and we've talked about this in the past, mantra is a throb of the infinite. It's a pulse. It's a vibration of that consciousness. And what we think of mantra are the sound forms, the words, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Kali Ma, Hum Sa. It's sort of the concrete form. It's sort of like thinking of yourself when you look in the mirror. You see your form, because it's a visible form. You hear your voice. You say, oh, that's the form of me as my voice. But there's subtler and subtler levels of who you are that aren't expressed in that physical way. And the same is true of mantra. And in fact, the whole understanding of mantra is that it arises out of stillness. And it serves as a vehicle for bringing us back into that stillness. That stillness is the infinite spacious awareness of the divine, of the self. And it's suffused with consciousness. It's suffused with the light of awareness. It's suffused with the loving, ecstatic embrace of all that is. These are all one fullness in and of itself that sort of expresses itself through sound and expresses itself really as the universe. So the understanding of mantra goes much deeper than just what we use it for in sadhana or meditative practices. The universe is the unfolding of that throb, the spanda, that pulsation of the infinite. And it said the first form it takes is Om. That's the primal mantra, Om. It doesn't have a meaning. It's that throb of the infinite starting to become. And it's just that one, and that one is Om. There's a whole Upanishad on the beauty of that mantra alone. And then it said the one becomes two, and the two becomes many. The two, that Om, divides into So-Hum, or Hum-Sa. So there's just this pure Om, and that's the fullness of awareness, undifferentiated. Soham or Hamsa, now within that is there starting to be a differentiation that hasn't separated, but now there's I am that. And so there's an awareness of I am, there's an awareness of a that, but it's fused. It's I am that. There's no separation. There's no difference. That's the root awareness of all mantra. Now, when we talk about different mantras then that are used in sadhana practices, the great mantras that were sought were mantras that came from great beings and a lineage of them that had that living Shakti. Shakti is the power of consciousness that creates mantra. So that it's living and present, it's awakened, it's alive. It's known as Chaitanya mantra. So this conscious, alive mantra. And so to receive that was to receive the greatest blessing, because that mantra now is a way of that power reinvigorating, reawakening, re-enlivening that same consciousness that is at root of who we are. So we come back to that. So there'll be practices that would be based on that. So for instance, in the Siddha lineage with Muktananda Swami, primarily he gave the mantra Om Namah Shivaya that he had received from his guru, Bhagavan Nityananda, and so forth back in the lineage. And also the Hamsa mantra as ways of conveying that power. I remember when I was asking Baba, I was going into prisons to do volunteer work, to do meditation programs in federal penitentiaries and state prisons. I said, how can people get this precious gift of Shaktipat, of that awakening and this infusion of this sublime grace? And he said, the mantra, mantra, mantra. Give them Om Namah Shivaya. Give them Hamsa. And then when you touch them, when you're doing things, that too conveys it. So that's that living quality that comes through the power of mantra. And with that in mind, you would then have that mantra. That would be the mantra that you used for meditation. Another common practice that's used with mantra is called japa. So japa is the repetition of mantra throughout the day or even for specific times. Some people will take a vow, in a sense, that they'll do 10,000 repetitions of Om Namah Shivaya every morning, and they'll use a mala to go through the rounds of that, to keep track of that, to become immersed in that. So that becomes the root of one's practice. And it's really diving into that Shakti, that alive power of the mantra that came through the lineage that one had the good fortune to receive it through. Now, at the same time, you might be chanting other mantras that are just an invocation. So in the ashram, we would be doing Hare Ram, Hare Krishna chants, Gopala chants, Shiva chants, Shakti chants, Kali chants. Those were ways of invoking and also opening the heart, because also chant and use of mantra, it has a devotional component to it. And so it would serve to get into what's called the rasa, the nectar, the delicious feeling of being held in the arms of the divine and swayed by the name and the chant. And so one would do those kinds of practices. But in meditation, you would come back to your practice of that one particular mantra. And so in that way, one gets really grounded in that as the source of all. Right? And so, this is considered so valuable that when you read, for instance, the story of Kabir, the great poet saint, he so desperately wanted to be initiated by this great Siddha master who was in his village called Ramananda. But Kabir wasn't of the right caste, and so he wasn't allowed to get that initiation. And he went through all kinds of ways to finally be able to sort of trick Ramananda into giving him his mantra. It was Ram, Ram. And so he literally dug a hole, covered it over, knew that Ramananda would go down to the river to bathe each morning, stepped on him in the hole and just yelled out, Ram, Ram. And Kabir jumps up and goes, see, now I'm initiated. You gave it to me. Now, what did Kabir do? Kabir went to the rooftops. Kabir wanted everybody to have access to that. And so he broke it open to everyone. He started yelling, Ram, 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 and giving it to everybody. That was like Baba was. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Hamsa, Hamsa. Everybody, just give it, give it, give it. Right? So that everybody would have access to that. So making use of mantra is a way of then going with where the mantra takes us, which is begins to dissolve the sense of separation, the sense of difference between ourself, the infinite, and the mantra, which is an expression of that. So Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. So making use of the mantra is then serves as a vehicle for taking us from the form into the formless. Because just as all mantra arises out of stillness, it dissolves back into stillness. And so the power of mantra then can help dissolve the mind, all its senses of difference and separation that just really pervades the mind. It's the nature of the mind. That is the mind. It can hold the concept of unity, but the experience of unity lies beyond the mind. And that's the root of mantra. That's why it's so potent. So when we make use of mantra, there's sort of the root mantra that we make use of for those kinds of deepening of meditation and practices like japa. And then there's the delight of mantra and the various forms of the divine that we can delight in, whether it's Krishna, Shakti, Parvati, Buddha, all kinds of forms that we find to be just exquisite. Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, I mean, just the forms are endless. And in part, that's where the mind gets caught. Because the mind is form, it loves form. So it can spend forever dancing from one form to the other for entertainment, in a sense, without going into the depths of absolute stillness. So that one mantra, staying with that. It's an old saying, better to dig one well 100 feet deep than 10 wells 10 feet deep. So you dig, you go deeper and deeper with the practice of mantra so that it takes you to the source itself. And then you discover your true nature in all its fullness. Person also asks about choosing a mantra and which one to choose. So again, part of it has to do with, well, just for focus and attention, because the mind can get scattered, you stay with one mantra. You know, it's said that in India they'll say, you know, for Vaishnavites, everything is Vishnu. For Shaivites, everything is Shiva. It's having the awareness that if we're doing Om Namah Shivaya, or Om Kalima, Om Kalima, well, it's all Shiva, it's all Kali, it's all Shakti. So we don't have to have a different mantra for each different sort of face of the infinite. That one takes us to the source of all. Go there, over and over, go there. Then you'll know them all. And the person's also asking about power of mantra, especially around initiation. And so that's what I was talking about relative to what's called Shaktipat, is that awakening of that same innate power that's within the individual, that's awake in a mantra that comes from an awakened person, an awakened lineage. And here the analogy that's often used is, well, you can, if you wanted to start a fire, you can get a couple of sticks and start rubbing them together and rub and get really hot, and eventually maybe you might get a fire going. In a similar way, there are Vedic texts that will talk about how many millions of repetitions with focus and devotion that you have to do to awaken the power of a mantra. Very different than receiving an awakened mantra from that kind of lineage. That's why it was so, and continues to be, so sought after and so prized. Because that's like somebody walking up to you and go, oh, you want to light your fire? Here, I actually have a candle. Here, just let me light that for you. And now you've got fire, they've got fire, we both got fire. And so that kind of being able to pass along the living flame, the living light of consciousness that throbs in mantra, That's what we're talking about as the root of why we even make use of a mantra for practice. Now, as a person uses mantra for longer and longer periods of time, it gets to the point where you don't even have to engage in the form of Om Namah Shivaya. You can, as soon as you might close your eyes or turn your attention to there's that living presence of the boundless one. There's a stillness that just arises. That is the most subtle and most powerful level of mantra. And so just descending into that stillness, that's where you go. If the mind is active, you start with an active form of the mantra. And then allow it to calm the mind and dissolve it back into its source. There was another question that was asked about, and this comes up sometimes, the difference, especially for me, because I often am combining different teachings from different traditions, because they speak to different ways of being able to access what is beyond words. You know, all the traditions, Buddhist tradition, Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Zen Buddhist tradition, non-dual Christianity, non-dual Judaism, these are different ways of being able to give the mind an opportunity to get the flavor of what that non-dual state is. But the state is the state. It's beyond words. We don't need words for that. So when Buddha was talking in the time of his teachings, and he continues to be a part of Buddhist tradition, of no self, no Atman. And in the yogic tradition, they'll often talk about Atman as the divine self. But really, even understanding that from both a yogic perspective and a Buddhist perspective is that self is empty because it's impermanent. It's ephemeral. It doesn't have any permanent foundation of existence. The infinite, the boundless awareness, we can call that Buddha mind, we can call that Shiva consciousness, we can call that the infinite one. None of the names really denote what it is, but going to that space is what it's really about. And so whether we're talking about the non-dual perspective in the Buddhist tradition or the non-dual perspective in the yogic tradition, it's about going beyond all forms, all names and forms, letting them go, letting them go, letting them go. So I remember when I was going through the sannyas ceremony, to offer everything into the fire. The sannyas ceremony is the Vedic ritual for becoming a renunciate, a swami. And you literally offer all the elements of your body, all the elements of who you might think you were, all to the fire, representing the fire of the infinite that transmutes and releases everything, so that there's no forms left. It's entering into that state. It's why it's also represented by the bindu, so the center black spot in the Mahakali yantra, or in Shri yantra, or in the bindu in the symbol for Om. That passageway, that bindu, you leave behind all philosophical concepts, constructs, arguments about Atman, no Atman. That's all the playground of the mind. Great for pundits, but if you want to know the infinite, dissolve into that. Dissolve into the loving embrace of that. That's where our home is, not in figuring out what's the difference between one philosophy or another. I had another question came from a clinical psychologist. And clinical psychologist was reading, and this is a book that I had put up on our last e-newsletter, not the last one, the one before last, the e-newsletter for Anam Cara. And so it's the Vijnana Bhairava. It's an ancient book from the Kashmir Shaivite tradition. And the Vijnana Bhairava, and this is by Lee Lyon. He's an old friend of mine. And it's the 112 meditations from the Book of the Divine Wisdom. Meditations from the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra with commentary and guided practice. So this clinical psychologist, transpersonal psychologist out in California, emailed me, and he was looking at one of the meditations near the end, and it says, and this is from the Jnana Bhairava, all contact with pain and pleasure comes through the senses. Withdraw your attention from your senses. Stay in yourself and abide in your own true nature. I'm going to read that again. All contact with pain and pleasure comes through the senses. Withdraw your attention from your senses. Stay in yourself and abide in your true nature. So the transpersonal psychologist writes, I wonder, many of my clients suffer from a form of numbness that usually began following a traumatic experience or deep depression. Is it possible that they retreated to their true nature but simply don't recognize it as what it truly is? Is it possible for us to not only help them understand in what state they are, but also by assisting them with controlling their senses to return to a more balanced experience of life? And so it's a great question, because we also have to be able to differentiate between various states of consciousness and states of mind that can look similar but are very different. So with trauma, and it's been part of my clinical work as well, when we're working with trauma, very often what can happen, and that can happen in the moment, and we can have this experience even if we're suddenly frightened, and that example of, you get to a test and you get nervous and your mind goes blank. Well, that blank mind isn't the blank mind of a quiet mind of a yogi in meditation. That's the blank mind of fear. So that emptiness of mind is not the emptiness we want to attain. So these different states of mind, we need to be able to look at them and be able to say, oh no, that's a defensive kind of structure that happens, and it's part of how our brain works with the fight, flight, freeze response, the stress response, that can change and alter our perceptions and our consciousness. But what's absent, and what's talked about in the Jnana Bhairava, is when you withdraw your consciousness from your senses. In the 8 limbs of yoga, one of the limbs is called pratyahara. Pratyahara means withdrawing from the senses. And the image that's often classically used in yoga is like a box turtle withdrawing into its shell. Right? Well, here, you're withdrawing consciousness from the senses. Now, what you notice is it's volitional. You're choosing to do it. It's not happening out of defense of being overwhelmed by pain or emotional pain. And it's directed towards then knowing your real nature, yourself. So when in the Jnana Bhairava it says, stay in yourself. That's a capital S self. And abide in your own true nature. So then we have to remember, what's our true nature? True nature isn't just a quiet mind. The true nature is this boundless consciousness that's suffused with a kind of ecstatic, loving awareness that embraces everything. So it's an expansion of consciousness, not a contraction and reduction of consciousness. It's the expansion to the fullness of all that we are. And when we're in that state, then even the pains of the body and the mind are so small compared to our infinitude. This is why it's not so much about getting rid of the pain, it's knowing your infinite nature. And then the pain takes a very different relative position in your consciousness. It doesn't dominate your awareness. In the infinite, it's that boundless, loving, conscious awareness, the embrace of all, including the body, including the mind. They're not separate, including the travails that they go through, the struggles and the pains that are part of everyday life. That too is held in that same loving embrace. So it holds it all. So that's how we want to understand what it is to rest in ourself, is to rest in this boundlessness, this grandeur, that there's nothing, no one, nothing left out. It's all in that sublime and divine embrace. So coming home to that is what it means to dissolve in the self. Coming home to that is what it means to follow mantra to its source and dissolve into that. Coming home to that means that when we're saying Om Namah Shivaya or Om Kalima or Hamsa, we're doing it with the awareness of I am that. I am that means I am the infinite. I am the boundless. I am all there is, all there ever was, all there ever will be, all of that. That's why it's so far beyond what even the mind, in its wildest imaginings, could conceive of. Coming home to that awareness, that's where mantra takes us. That's why it's such a sublime vehicle, because it starts out very easily grasped. Om Namah Shivaya. Who can't say that? Or Om Kali Ma. Or even Hamsa. So some people will have a mantra, they'll use one of the mantras for japa, daily repetition throughout the day to be immersed in it. They might do Om Kali Ma or Om Namah Shivaya, and then use that for meditation as well. Some people find they like to do a japa mantra and then a different mantra, one of the great mantras, the Shaktipat mantras, for meditation. That's fine too. But not a lot of different mantras so the mind, because that just feeds the mind. Gee, what do I feel like doing today? Gee, I think I'll do this mantra. No, maybe I feel like that one. Wait a minute, I really like the image of this goddess. Now the mind is lost in the field of its own wanderings, not staying one-pointed, focused, and dissolving into that one. So that's what we give it. The one, the only one, your sublime self, your loving nature. What else would you want? So when we think of mantra, this is a poem from Kali's Bazaar. I read a couple of poems last week from Kali's Bazaar. This one is called Did You Know? Did you know you can hear the hills singing? Joined by the sky, the trees, the bushes, the lakes and streams, the oceans and rivers. Backed by the tiny drum beats of insects' feet, the swoosh of millions of wings, the sound of countless fins swaying in water, the pounding of the waves, the rustling song of the stones stirred to joy in the surf. Listen, listen, listen for God singing His songs of love to Himself. See, this is mantra. Listen, listen for God singing His songs of love to Himself. Become still. Listen. The stars are singing to you. The earth, the moon, and all the planets have joined in the chorus. Your breath is singing. Your friends are singing. Your enemies are singing. Listen. Please listen. You'll hear. You'll hear. Shivoham, Shivoham. Chidananda Rupaha, Shivoham, Shivoham. Analhak, Analhak, Analhak. Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi. Hamsa, Hamsa, Hamsa. The mantras. I am Shiva. I am the auspicious one. I am the form of consciousness and bliss. Shivoham, Shivoham. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. I am Allah. Analhak. I am Allah. I am Allah. I am Allah. I am Brahman, the Absolute. I am Brahman. I am Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that. I am that. I am that. You are all that. You are the hills, the mountains, the rivers, the oceans. You are all the creatures and all the people of all creation. You are all that. You are God singing your songs of love to yourself. Without you, the song would be incomplete. Without all creation, what would the song be? Incomplete. Preserve it all. Every creature, every being. Keep your song of songs full and true. Know. Know that you are the divine love that embraces it all, that has given birth to it all, that holds it all. In your sublime, infinite, boundless heart. That's where mantra takes us. So we let go and we let go. That's why with the use of mantra, we let go of this thought, we let go of that thought, to come back home, to rest in that. So we have to teach the will, the ego mind's drive, to surrender gently to the divine, like a snowflake falling, silently settling, its destined place in the field of snow, embracing its perfection. The one who knows all this, and delights in the life course of every snowflake, of every creature, of everything. Letting go and letting go and letting go. Freedom is already fully present. Letting go and letting go and letting go of illusion, of pain, of suffering. Letting go and letting go and letting go. Fall onto the exquisitely soft bed of love she has waiting for you. This is meditation. Meditation is letting go. Meditation is letting go into that love. Set aside the mind's striving. Set aside its effort. Fall into that loving embrace. So inviting. This is meditation. This is falling into the mantra, the love song of the infinite, embracing every cell in your body, drawing you home to the truth of who you are. So now we're going to be chanting the mantra for a few minutes and then just sit in that stillness. And we're going to be chanting Om Namah Shivaya and Om Kali Ma. And so just join in as you get that. And we'll chant for a few minutes and then just sit in the stillness. If the mind moves, invite it to come back to that soft bed of Om Namah Shivaya, Om Kali Ma, and be lulled by that. Mantra and chanting, it's a love song. It's a love song from yourself to yourself, inviting you to come home where there's no more pain, no more suffering, so you can be refreshed and strengthened. Come home to yourself. So we'll be chanting now. Om Namah that living, loving throb of consciousness that is mantra, to dissolve all the thoughts, all that moves through the mind, as easily as the ocean, and wash over anything that's flooding it. It's an ocean of love, an ocean of consciousness, the throb of mantra. It's a pulse of your own self. You are the mantra. You are the source of mantra. You are that delightful sound of mantra, embracing all. Let go into that. Dissolve into that. Come home to yourself. And we end with this prayer. May all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. So taking refuge in mantra. That loving throb of your own being, always there. The mantras are already arising within us. That's what the ancient sages discovered when they went deep into meditation. They heard that sound and knew it would draw everyone back to that source. So come back home to yourself. In this age, it's said that mantra is the practice for Kali Yuga because it's so easy, it's so accessible. Anytime, any place. Come back home to yourself through this living throb of that consciousness, that love. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Kali Ma. The awareness, Hum Sa. I am that. I am that. That's what it is, to practice, to dissolve into that one. So I want to thank you all for coming again and spending your time with us. And especially also thanking you for your care, your support. Emails that I get are really heartwarming, that people support us with their donations and their generous, large hearts. So thank you all for that. Also for the way that people support us by sharing this with others so that we can make this available freely to as many people as possible. That's the mission of our nonprofit organization, Anam Cara, is to make meditation, make these practices make these gifts of wisdom available to everyone as freely and openly as possible. So thank you all for being a part of that seva and making all that we do possible. So namaste, namaste. Thank you all for coming. I look forward to seeing you next week.